Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I hope you all had a fantastic break over the holiday season. And as I get older, one of the things that I'm learning more and more about are areas in life that so many of us take for granted throughout our lives. For example, let's talk about health and the health of your loved ones. I think for the most part, most people listening are going to be thinking that they can have instant access to healthcare if you get sick. But something I'm learning more and more about is access to social and mental health care. What if you pick up a disability, long-time illness, or help with mental health care? I'm learning firsthand that access to those kind of services are often limited or even non-existent. For example, my parents are only in their 60s, which is quite young. But rather than enjoying retirement right now, my dad is very ill with the nasty combination of Parkinson's disease and dementia. Now, my mum is the main carer, but of course she is slowly getting more and more exhausted. Meanwhile, social care and mental health both say it's the responsibility of the other and end up getting nowhere fast. So in that kind of scenario, the children and other family members must try to pull together and help their parents. But this can mean putting their career on hold too. But these are just a few areas that you don't hear about and nobody warns you about. So I found myself wondering, are there any tech companies that are exploring issues like this? And straight away, I came across a company called Lavanya Plus. And they've launched a product called WeMa Care. And essentially, it's a new care solution aimed at helping businesses to provide advice, support and referrals so informal carers can arrange the care services on behalf of their loved ones. And just for a bit of context here, outside of my own personal story, there are 8 million informal carers in the UK alone. And 18% of full-time workers are also providing some form of unpaid care for someone close to them. And 88% say their employer provides them with no support. So the result of that is 46% feel lonely or isolated as a result of their caring responsibilities. And what makes matters even worse, an incredible 82% do not feel comfortable talking about their caring responsibilities in the workplace. So I invited Vivek, the CEO and co-founder of Lavanya Plus, to learn more about how he believes that CareTech could ease the ever-increasing pressure faced by informal carers, and how he believes that such technology can also help businesses offer some long-overdue support to its employees who are currently feeling torn between full-time employment, their career, and their care responsibilities to those that they love. So come and join me in London, here in the UK, where Vivek is going to share how he is using technology to transform healthcare and social care. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi Neil. Thanks very much for having me here today, actually. So my name's Vivek Patni. I'm the CEO of a startup company working in the care technology space called Lavanya Plus. We've really been in this industry for about 3 years now, focused on driving accessibility for care services.
And my understanding is that what you're aiming to do here is become the leader in driving integration of care, health and wellbeing services to actually create a future where trusted and quality healthcare is actually accessible to everyone. But the question I've got to ask is, what makes your digital health tech platform different from all the other solutions out there?
Well, I think accessibility to care services is a huge topic right now, especially in the social care space and even moving kind of from when people are in hospital care, moving back home. One of the biggest things that people tend to do in this space is drive technology only as the agenda. And one thing that we've identified as being a key differentiator, especially in usability for end service users, is who are they actually talking to? What are they actually trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? How is it going to be an emotional purchase if they're just talking to an online technology platform? So one thing that our technology really does, that it takes someone autonomously from the very point of entry all the way through to service delivery. But what we've added onto that is this notion of people before technology, which really gives someone the ability to speak directly to someone over the phone or in person. Because what we can't forget about social care, it's a very emotional purchase. People are very unaware of how things work, what needs to be done. So allowing people to actually speak to someone at the end of a line is hugely important, we find, and actually something that businesses in care technology tend to forget. Everyone's got the idea that things need to be automated, processes need to be driven through technology, there needs to be outcomes-based reporting, all technology-driven. However, you need someone there to help someone through that journey, to even engage them from day one.
And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today was to learn more about WeMa Care, which I believe is a new CareTech solution aimed at helping businesses. So can you set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're aiming to solve for those businesses, but ultimately with your technology?
What Lavanya Plus has done is create a product suite called WeMa. And really the aim of WeMa is to support people with their informal care duties. I mean, we've recently done some research into people, working professionals who also act as informal carers. And we found that 20% of the UK workforce act as informal carers. And this was done on a survey of 2,000 professional workers. So 20% of them were acting as informal carers. And what was so mind-boggling was actually 90% of those find that employers have no policies in place at all to help them with their social care requirements, either for themselves or their loved ones. And actually 50% of those feel that informal care is going to be hampering their career progression, which is just a crazy statistic to think about, that people are so worried about their informal care duties, but there's nothing they can really do about that because they have to look after their loved ones, but they still have to work. It's such a catch-22 situation. So what we're trying to do at Lavanya is, with WeMa, support someone all the way from firstly identifying and understanding their care requirement through the care concierge, through to sourcing the most appropriate care provider using the online marketplace, and actually getting that service delivered efficiently with the care management software that service providers can use. And that's really where we touch multiple stakeholders. For the business, what that means, if we're supporting a business and their employees with their informal care duties, making the life more comfortable for their employees so they actually feel stress-free and they're getting the most appropriate care for their loved ones at home, for a business, that's going to result in improved productivity, improved corporate output, and actually, most importantly, improved employee well-being and a better, comfortable environment for people to work in.
And I think there are going to be many people listening all over the world, and a lot of the topics that you discussed there are going to resonate with so many people because they may feel that, like you said, their career could be feeling hampered by their need to care for a loved one or family member. So do you have any client stories that you could possibly share that will help the business leaders and equally employees that are also carers understand how it would work in their world or their business?
Yes, for sure. So we're currently working with a business called Global Payments. They're based up in Leicester. Over the last few months, we've been working a lot with their employees and really trying to implement WeMa Care as a staple in their business, and working with anyone from C-suite all the way down to new employees and make it accessible for everyone. So there's been so many stories actually. And what's really interesting, and something that we obviously this product is quite new, and one of the things we didn't really envision from day one was the real diversity of inquiries that we were going to be receiving, and it's been anything from some of the more basic ones. And for example, an individual, her mother recently passed away. and her father was at home and unfortunately couldn't cook for himself. He had never had to cook really in his life. So one of those was actually getting food delivered to him on kind of 3-4 times a week to make sure he had enough food throughout the week. But that's kind of the more basic level of things. However, it goes really kind of much further than that into one of the more recent ones that we had was an individual was receiving local authority funded care for his mother, receiving 4 calls a day, double-handed, which means 2 people are going to visit her 4 times a day. That was done, like I say, through the local authority. However, the service that was being delivered was very, very poor and very unprofessional. And as a family, they were really struggling with this specific service provider. So what we had to do at WeMa was go in. Firstly, the process we go through is a questioning process to really understand someone's requirement, figure out what specific services we believe they need. And we've got a trained team that will help identify these services through the assessment process that we have. And then we go and source new service providers who will be able to match with those services that we've identified. So we had an identification that we knew the services that were being delivered. However, we had to find a new service provider. So we managed to do that, engage that service provider with the service user, and basically get that new service organized and delivered. And what was really interesting about that was actually the amount of communication we had to do with the local authority themselves. And it's one of the key areas of difficulty that people find, especially having to manage care services themselves, is what do they do? Who do they talk to? How do they talk to the local authority social care manager? What do they need to say? How do they engage with the fact that they've got a poor care provider and they want to change that person? And then how do they find a new one? And there's all these questions that really come out, and that's exactly what we do to help. So, I mean, the outcome of that is we managed to find a new care provider. We spoke with the local authority, managed to get them to switch the payment to the new care provider and get everything sorted. And the service user is really happy with the new services being delivered. And the other kind of flip side of that as well is the amount of time and work we saved for the local authority. So on average, I mean, that was about a 7-hour, 8-hour process of direct work to actually get that completed. So that was time and money saved to the local authority so they can allocate their resources elsewhere.
And it is such a huge problem. And I know so many people going through so many different things that we're talking about here. And from my own personal point of view, my parents are only in their 60s. And my mother at the moment is looking after my dad, who's, like I said, in his 60s and suffering from both Parkinson's and dementia. And finding that there is such a lack of care out there and everyone's having to, pull together to try and do their bit. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you're also using technology to help this ever increasing pressure faced by informal carers?
I think exactly, yeah. I think that scenario you've just given is an exact scenario of someone that we're trying to help. Yeah. And it's really when there's a lot of family pressure, there's a lot of difficulty. And like we said, there's a lot of lack of understanding actually of how the care sector is meant to work. I mean, I speak to so many people who just think that when they need care, it's going to be free at the point of service. And that's just really not the case. And it's something that I guess needs to be explained to people at a much earlier stage so that they can prepare for when that time comes as they get older. Everyone's getting older. There's a hugely aging population. People live longer. And it's a huge issue and a huge issue that the NHS is currently facing. So one of the key areas that we're trying to focus in on, specifically on the tech support for friends and family, is the whole idea around creating a single entry point for people to find everything from what service do they need, where can they find those services, what services are available to them locally, what is the rating of those service providers, what kind of, are there any reviews, what services do they do? And that's this whole marketplace concept that we've created with one of the WeMa products, which is called WeMa Life. So what an individual can do is they can go online and see all of the information they need to make an informed decision about the care that they want. And of course, if they want to give someone a call, we're also there to speak to them directly and help them through that journey. What we can then do once they've figured out a little bit about, okay, I'm really happy with this type of service, I need this type of service provider, they can then go and make the booking online as well, make the payment online, whether they're doing it from a local authority funded care or whether they're paying privately. We have both options as well. So it's really creating that ecosystem where someone can basically manage their entire care requirements through this online portal.
And we are at that time of the year where the cold winter months are likely to impact many vulnerable individuals. And from my experience, those that generally care about people affected have been touched by that experience themselves. So with that in mind, can I ask about the story behind your company and the inspiration behind it too?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because it's something that I always say, that so many people have got into, especially the care sector, because they've had personal experience or a bad experience at some point in their journey of either looking after themselves or a loved one. And that's exactly how we got into the business as well. So actually, I run this with my parents, which is a very different kind of different management team than you would probably normally find. But a lot of fun, because we've all been through these experiences, and we all have had built our own knowledge through our own experiences, that we've had to be looking after other people, other family members. And that's really why we got into it. So about 3 years ago is, like I say, when we started Lavanya. But really the issue arose about 7 years ago. It was my grandfather, who was living here. He lives here in the UK, and had gone out to India, as they normally do over the winter months, to get a bit of heat and get out of England basically while it's cold. When he had gone over there, unfortunately, he had become quite unwell and got hospitalized. And I mean, 7 years ago, 8 years ago in India, hospital care was completely different to even what it is now. And my mum actually had to go and fly out to India and live in the hospital with him, because they wouldn't administer medicine until it's paid for. Even in the case of an emergency, someone had to pay for that med before it was actually delivered to the patient. Crazy concept, but that's just how it used to work. So she went and lived in the room with him to make sure if he ever needed emergency med. Fortunately, he got better and got back home in India initially, where he was basically recovering until he was well enough to fly back to London. So firstly, we had to find care for him in India. Again, a really difficult thing to do there, because it's not a traditional concept of external care for an individual. But we managed to get something sorted, and he got better and then came back to the UK. So that was all great. However, when he came back to the UK, that's really when the big difficulty started, because you're playing with hospitals, you're playing with publicly funded social care, you're playing with privately funded social care, and the variety of services that he needed was so difficult to manage. It was everything from care to physio to nutritionist to, I guess, more clinical care to GPs. There's everything that you had to try and bring together around him. And back then, 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was absolutely nothing really being done in social care from a technology point of view. Systems were very archaic. Technology deliveries, care delivery systems were very archaic. There was nothing that was kind of moving that industry forward from tech. And that's where we came in and said, we need to find a way to make this easier for people. We were in the fortunate position that we had lots of family. But so many people have no family and have to manage this themselves, and that's so hard for them to do. So how can you bring all of these services around someone, all of the knowledge around someone, and allow them to make their own decisions about what they want to do? And that's really where WeMa was born. It was all around aggregating service providers, and that's why we also say we bring care, health, and well-being providers, because we really believe they all work hand in hand. It's very often the case that if someone needs care, they might need a physio if they had a fall or something like that, and they might need some other clinical services as well. And that's what we try and do, is bring all of these around someone and basically allow them to have the access that they need and the knowledge that they need. And that's the most important thing, the knowledge, so that they feel comfortable in the decisions and services they receive.
And the success of any tech solution, of course, is often determined by the adoption and kind of partnerships that it's got. So when you're attempting to be a single point of interaction between individuals, service providers, private enterprises and public government sector bodies, can you tell me more about that kind of partnership strategy and that mission that you're on?
Yeah, and one of the things around the technology platform that we've built is we've included a lot of touch points. Like you say, there's different stakeholders that can actually use this technology. It can go anyone from the service user to the service provider to a private enterprise, a corporate, or even public and government sector bodies. And each of those have a touch point into the WeMa platform. So it's really creating that single point of entry. One of the things that we're trying to do around the partnership model is how do we engage different partners, like you say, around corporates and around public sector to work together to essentially support that end user. And any partnership strategy that we go with is how is it going to be supporting that end user? So whether it's a corporate partnership strategy, and that's actually the selling to the corporates, or working with local authorities, like I mentioned, one of the inquiries that we took for global payments saved a significant amount of time for a local authority. So there's definite areas of support we can give to those guys. But then also looking at the technology itself, how can we create partnerships within our own technology platform? We don't want to be a technology platform that constantly reinvents the wheel and tries to build pieces of technology that are already out there in the market. We want to work with other technology partners to actually support the entire ecosystem and support the end user. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We want to be that common technology platform that's really the glue that binds these different stakeholders together. However, if there's areas that we can work with other technology players, other businesses, other guys that have specialties in different areas of the industry, then that's what we want to do. And grow kind of communally together.
And looking towards the future, what's your grand vision for Lavanya Plus? And also, we also have people listening all over the world in 165 different countries. So which markets do you serve at the moment and which do you plan to serve in the future?
The current market that we're serving is the UK. Yeah. However, the way we've developed our platform and our like you say, our grand vision for Lavanya is to be a global company. Care and health is obviously a global issue and people are aging all over the world, and infrastructure for care services needs to be significantly improved for people to actually have access when they're at that age for the services that they want. I mean, everyone's now at a point where everything is at the touch of a button. You can buy any product you want online. You can actually buy most services. You can buy cleaners, you can buy cooks, you can buy everything. However, healthcare and social care is still difficult to buy online. And that's what we want to be. We want to be that common platform that everyone feels comfortable to go to find any of their care, health, or well-being services across the world. Like you say, you guys are being listened to in 165 countries across the world. One of our key areas that we've identified to go to next is probably India, because there's a huge population, there's a huge lack of information around social care, and actually social care is still quite stigmatized in terms of how it works within a family network. But what's now happening in countries such as India is there's a lot of young people, the people that would tend to be the informal carers of the elderly family members, who are moving either to big cities or even coming to the UK or to the US, for example. And a lot of people are being left behind who would tend to have been cared for by younger individuals of the family. So the question then lies is how are they being looked after? Because India, as I say, as like a country in general, doesn't really have a focus on social care, but it's still needed for so many people. So that's where we can be that kind of international communicative platform that supports, if, for example, an individual is living here, but their grandparents live in India, through the mobile app and the technology that we have, they can see all the information about the care that their loved one's receiving in India without even picking up the phone. And that's just something that we try and support with anything that we do. Is how can it be common across different countries and across borders? So even Europe, for example, is looking at a next nearshore area that we can support. And there's a lot of countries in Europe that have a similar health ecosystem to the UK. So they would be natural progressors of our platform. For example, the Netherlands, also places like Sweden. They're very similar in the way they deliver health and social care. Other large areas that do similar things as well are Australia. They have a very similar health and social care ecosystem to the UK. And that's really where we're trying to identify the next players. But really for us, it's a lift and shift model that can go anywhere in the world. Like we've said, our new focus is supporting businesses who can then support their employees. And of course, businesses are everywhere and businesses all need the support. So we can really go anywhere to give them that support.
And I love how you're using technology to deliver greater care to people and families. It's inspirational, it really is. And as a tech company, though, are there any emerging technologies that particularly excite you and will help you continue to evolve as a company moving forward?
I think one of the most important emerging technologies in the market, especially in social care, are pieces of tech that can help people have access to the right services, similar to what we do. However, for example, AI and chatbot or video consultation, what these pieces of technologies are now doing is giving people, even in the most remote areas, the access that they need to get some kind of care delivered. So, for example, video consultation, if someone needs advice or they need care or they need anything to do with their health or well-being, however, they don't have the ability to travel to a clinic or the ability to even travel to their GP, they can actually consult directly online with someone. It's really supporting the knowledge and the answers of people's questions. And that's really the hardest thing, is people have so many questions because no one's trained in social care. No one's trained in healthcare when you're trying to find things for yourselves generally. So you're just stuck with all of these questions. You're so concerned about your loved one and you've got so many questions to ask. If you can ask a bot online, or if you can video consult someone to get the answers of those questions without actually having to leave your own home, well, that's just a huge benefit to you because it's so easy to then do. And I think for us at WeMa, that's one of the next steps that we're going to be building into, is how we actually making this a completely nationally accessible service. That's to anyone across the country who might have a question, who might want some more knowledge, who might want support in sourcing the most appropriate services for themselves. They can just message us online, or they can give us a call over a video, or they can even call their service provider over the video as well. And that's, I think, where the next era of social care is going. It's already happening in healthcare. You've seen the likes of Babylon, Livy, all coming up with these video consultation GP apps. I think social care is the very obvious next stage for things like that.
Fantastic. And before I let you go, can you remind the listeners of where they can find you guys online and just do a little bit of research and find out more information about the kind of things we've talked about today? And of course, contact your team if they are left with any questions.
Yeah, so you can find us online at wearewema.com. So that's WeareWema.com, wearewema.com. Or you can email us at inquiries@lavanyaplus.com, which goes to the business. Or all of the contact information is online as well. So there's different forms you can fill online to get in touch with us, or there's phone numbers and things as well. So yeah, lots of different touch points, but I would definitely welcome anyone who is interested in finding out more about WeMa and the service to give me a call or contact me at any time. That would be great.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the blog post that will accompany this podcast episode, just so people can get hold of you nice and easily. But at the end of every episode, I always say that technology works best when it brings people together. But what I love about what you're doing here is using technology to deliver greater healthcare. And I can't give you any higher praise than that. It's fantastic what you're doing. I'd love to stay in touch with you and see how this journey continues to evolve. So best of luck in 2020 and hopefully speak to you later this year. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Neil. Thank you very much.
We are all repenting at the moment, aren't we, after eating and drinking too much throughout the holiday season, saying things like New Year, New Me, Dry January, or whatever it is. And we're also focusing on it's the right time of the year to make those goals for the 12 months ahead and New Year's resolutions. But the reality is, in this crazy journey of life that we're all on, some things cannot be planned. And during these cold winter months, they're likely to impact many vulnerable individuals and consequently the people who care for them. And I would hope that every single person listening to this podcast cares for someone and has someone that cares for them. This is a global problem and it's something that can affect any one of us and at any time in our lives. So if you are a business, your top talent could be asked at any moment to step up and help their family. So I cannot thank Vivek enough for coming on the show and not only raising awareness, but also sharing that huge impact that they're having on transforming how they're using technology. But what is social care, mental health care like in the country that you listen to this podcast? And do you or anybody you know have to put their career on hold due to the responsibilities of looking after their parents or loved ones as an informal carer? I'd love to hear your stories. I've told you mine at the beginning of this podcast. Like I say, I'm always an open book. Probably reveal far too much than I should. But I'd love to hear your story too. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. And I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the usual places at Neil C. Hughes too. So take good care of yourselves and your families here in 2020. And a big thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. So thanks for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.